Okay, so it's already a few minutes after 1, and we have a few people online here to hear what you and Chris have to say about your organization and what you're doing and where we're going. So I'm going to pass it. I'm Karen Parkhurst. It's really nice to finally meet the two of you. And welcome. I welcome you to the town of Canandaigua. And I'll pass this on to Isaac. Are you going to be the?
Yeah, would it be just so that I know who's in the room, could we do a quick like intro
Okay, yeah.
names and then we'll take over from there.
Sure.
Sure.
What?
My name is Sal, S-A-L, and I'm with the Citizens Implementation Committee.
Dave Sutter, I'm town board.
John Casey, Town Board.
Tom Schwartz, number of committee.
Take your pick.
I'm Dan Unrath. I'm just an interested observer.
And we also have Nash Bach, who is with Habitat for Humanity. He's on Zoom.
Hi, Nash.
Jeff Cook is with Cook Properties. He's on Zoom.
Okay, good.
And Chris Rolland, Chris, who are you with?
Hi, Chris Rowland from Edgemere Development.
Edgemere Development. He's another developer in the area. And we have Sarah Simpson from Pathstone on so far. And I expect a few more will straggle in as we get going.
All right, fantastic.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
thank you so much. I already see familiar faces and familiar names already, so I think we're in good shape. Good to see you, Sarah, and a few others that we've spoken to. My name is Isaac Kwan. I'm at Urban Partners. Chris is actually the project manager for this project, but the two of us kind of work in tandem. So we'll do, we'll share responsibilities in facilitating some conversation that we'd love to hear from you. So we're working for the city. Not the city, the county itself. So Ontario County hired us to do a housing study for the entire county. So our methodology is first to go through a set of demographics, background analysis, and then we launched into a stakeholder engagement process in which I think our list is like over 150 people throughout the county, many constituencies, different parts of town, different kind of disciplines, and the representatives from different walks of life, etc. So we're systematically going through a list of folks to interview one-on-one. As we're doing that, as you know, we've put out there a housing survey for many people to kind of distribute widely for us, and it's been going very well. We have almost 600 responses already collected. So we get a good feel for what the general public feels are high priorities in terms of housing challenges, and affordability definitely is a key factor that we already have gleaned already from conversations, but I think our survey would also kind of remark the same thing. So in terms of how we have mapped out this process, this is a quick summary slide that we prepared for our clients for the county. So we started back in September. Chris and I went up there and met with the county staff, and since then we've been working on a kind of a background analysis. So everything from household trends, population trends, to jobs, and a real kind of snapshot of your housing supply, what's currently there, how much housing stock, what kind of vacancy. So that's the phase one. Part two of phase one is where we are currently, which is interviews and kind of gathering information from housing survey. Then we launch into in the early spring section of phase two, which is our market analysis. That is when we dive deeply into the housing market, not with census data, which is the preliminary data analysis, but with actual sales records for the past 5 years, and also what's going on in terms of the housing market, rentals, vacancies, the housing typologies, the in terms of supply and demand, etc., for the rental market as well. So that is the most important quantitative analysis that we will do in addition to the background analysis based on census, and then that compile with a set of responses that we've gathered from the stakeholders. We will present to the county what's we're calling a interim report. So we're targeting May, but it could probably happen in April. So sometime late spring, early summer kind of a situation is when we're targeting for that. That's when we start pivoting toward a needs analysis and recommendations. And that process will probably take some time. We'll slow down and really engage with different folks to gather kind of ideas and thoughts in terms of like remedies or strategies to respond to the challenges that we've identified, both in terms of the quantitative analysis, but also what people have told us through stakeholder interviews. And then that'll take a few months, and we would imagine that we will arrive at a draft final document sometime around July, early August, and present to the steering committee, the county, and then a public presentation to be unveiled to the public where we are. So that is it in a nutshell. Before we move forward, we're here today as part of the phase 1A, if you will, to really listen to you in terms of what you think are the high priorities, some of the challenges that you're seeing, some of the encouraging signs that you may be seeing, some of the good work that some of you guys are doing and some of your partners are doing that we should be made aware of. But we're on a listening tour of folks. And we will, I'm going to hand it off to Chris to facilitate a set of questions that we've been asking that we'd like to ask the panel here today. But before we do that, do you have any questions about the schedule or our process that we can address before we move forward?
I have one question, Isaac, about the final documents in the report presentation. Will there be information disseminated to the public to attend that final presentation, or will there be a public hearing? How is that going to?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. Chris, you want to kind of jump in there? I mean,
hi everybody. Nice to be here. Chris Lankinow. Just to kind of follow up on Isaac's graphic here. We talked with the county yesterday, and we may tweak this a little bit just to leave some more room at the end for some discussion. To answer your question, yes, the public will be invited. The county will probably do some sort of PR release about the study and inviting. But looking at that green section in the middle of the graphic, we were talking about the interim report meeting being something that everyone we're talking with today would be invited to, like basically all the stakeholders we're meeting with. We would hold an in-person meeting to present our findings in April or May, and then at the end of the process, a public meeting that everybody would be invited to comment on the report and the findings, and then we'd wrap things up. So there may be a little bit of adjustment in there, but so there will be opportunities for feedback. So in addition to the survey. And one more note too, your group, I think everyone on your group, I could be wrong, has been invited individually to a stakeholder interview, maybe not everybody. So between this meeting today as a group setting and some of our one-on-ones, we're definitely getting a lot of good feedback from your affordable housing committee. So appreciate your feedback.
So Chris and Isaac, are you looking now for us to individually tell you what our thoughts are? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, I think as kind of a group discussion, I know people hate that expression, but as Isaac said, we have some questions we'd like to ask. Pretty much what we're asking folks one-on-one, and this is a safe space feel free to speak your mind. We're not gonna, the way we operate usually with the feedback is, it's anonymous. Like we may, if there's really good information, we would like to include it, but we're not going to say, oh, so-and-so said this, you really need. So, the county needs to know what people think, but we'll keep it confidential. So feel free to, speak whatever is on your mind. But yeah, we would like to just kind of go through a series of questions, getting your sense of some of the challenges in the county in terms of housing, some of the opportunities you see, any kind of partnerships or, and any efforts you've all made to date as a group. I think it's great that you are meeting and you're concerned about housing enough to, have an initiative among yourselves to advance the cause. So I think that's really great.
So can I start out by telling you how we started?
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
And in around 2019, the town of Canandaigua undertook an update on their master plan.
Okay.
And there was a meeting of town members, not just people that in their spare time work for nothing for the town, but people that were interested. And we met and we determined 5 items that needed to be addressed immediately. And one of those items was affordable workplace housing and transportation.
Mm.
So the town board approved the setup of this team, which is a subcommittee of another committee in the town. And I had a special interest in affordable housing because it affected one of my family members. But more than that, I'm also on the Ontario County Economic Development Board of Directors. And I've been on that board for probably 9-10 years. And I have repeatedly heard businesses coming into that board saying, we need to have housing for our people, and it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be within a relatively short distance of where our business is going to be located, and we need some transportation also, opportunities also. So those 2 things are what drove me to raise my hand and said, yeah, I'll be involved in this. We now have 34 names on our invite list, and some of them are here with us today. And of course, all of the groups who are involved with housing people are part of this team. We're all very verbal in the community, but there's parts of Ontario County which have very wealthy people living in there, and it's hard to get across the concept of affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
You have multi-million-dollar homes scattered throughout. So it's been a difficult concept for many people to grasp.
Yeah.
And I applaud the county for moving forward and giving a contract to your company to try to help. So I'll pass it on to you with your questions now.
Yeah, no, that you actually answered several. One of our questions is there enough affordable housing for the workforce? And we've been hearing no. And then specifically your question about transportation, one question we always like to ask is, do you think housing is located close enough, to transportation, and are people able to get to their jobs efficiently? And the answer is no. And we're also hearing, just like you said,
I'm not sure it's no.
Well,
it could be maybe, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. For some, probably.
Yet to be determined, right?
Yeah. And then we have started hearing from some of the employers that yes, it's we're hearing from our workforce that it is difficult.
So when you say you're hearing from the workforce, what employers are you hearing that from?
We're still talking to folks, but I spoke to the general manager of Eastview Mall for one thing. So, his 3,000 employees cover a range of income levels. You've got the executives, you've got the floor people on the floor making, probably $12 an hour or whatever. So he was speaking to a lot of those folks that, you know, they can't afford to live near the mall because it's too expensive, like Victor, for example. So they're commuting quite a ways. We're going to speak to some of the hospitals and some of the other major employers. So we will get more, you know, anecdotal information from them. But it's a common issue that we hear, that, you know, in a lot of places we work, there's often a mismatch between accessible, affordable housing and employment. So,
Can I ask a question before we continue, Chris? Now,
absolutely.
if you know the word affordable and workforce, those glossary of terms are kind
Very
of
good.
like different people refer to it as a different concept. So, just wanted to kind of like make sure that we understand what your charter, if you will, like how would you define affordable? Is it more in a like a general way that people shouldn't pay more than 30% of their income toward housing, so therefore it's affordable, which talks about attainability? Or are you talking about income restricted to people
Yeah.
making like 50% or below area median income? Or what's your definition of workforce? Is it, you know, so that would be helpful to get an idea of like what segment of the population that you're specifically primarily interested in.
Right.
In serving. So
This was something that we were struggling with at the beginning. I think when we got together, there were so many different definitions and taking on it that
Yeah.
I don't think we still understand,
Yeah.
you know, ourselves exactly what it is, who we're talking to, and that type of information, I think, would be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. It's good to kind of get a baseline of what everyone thinks and everyone agrees on. What we typically do is begin the, you know, the final deliverable with a kind of a glossary of terms, so everyone understands. Okay, at least as far as this study goes, this is what we mean by affordable. This is what we mean by workforce. Just so anyone who reads the, you know, the report.
So for the study that you're doing, what is your definition of affordable? Because that's probably more important than what our definition is.
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Well,
Isaac.
okay. So let me just share. This is the
Oh,
glossary
that's
that
great.
we typically
Thanks.
include as part of our studies, and we have, you know, some terms. The term affordable, you know, survey cost burden is a concept that we always want to, you know, highlight, that, you know, you shouldn't be paying more than 30% of your income, but often in reality, people pay 30% and often more than 50% of their income if you go lower down on their incomes. And then a series of terminologies. Workforce housing, it's basically middle income workers, professionals. Generally, people refer to workforce housing as somewhere between 80 and 120% of the area median income. So you're not considered officially by HUD to be low income, which is you have to be below 80, but you don't make enough that the private market prices that you're seeing by the home builders, you're not quite able to, you know, afford that. And you can, you know, catch a lot of people in that segment. So this is for a different county, the county that we're working on in Wayne County, Pennsylvania, not New York. But, you know, the low income should be housing affordable to a family of four making less than $62,000 a year. And then workforce is a little bit above that. So that kind of gives you an idea of like affordability for low income. But people often call affordable housing, really they mean subsidized income restricted housing, like tax credits and HUD homes and etc. So this terminology having a common like set of terms that we all refer to similarly throughout the county, that is, I think that would be helpful for our conversation. So that you don't get a mixed messaging in terms of like, we need more affordability. Some people say, but we don't want this thing or that thing, but we could be just talking about it in a generic sense. So that's kind of the idea, but it sounds like, you know, when you got organized, that you were just, you know, concerned with affordability in general, and looking at people who are struggling to, you know, find decent housing at a certain price point that they can afford in a more generic sense, and then one of the things that really emerged, especially related to economic development and business development, was the notion of workers who are working, presumably having decent jobs, but still can't afford housing anywhere nearby. So that speaks to the workforce segment as well.
And I believe that you have keyed into what our charter is, a workforce that is indeed getting up and going to work every day, and being able to have a livable space to come home to every evening, and a way to get both places. And I can tell you, I am just a retired old lady, and I get at least one email a week about someone needing transportation to get to work. And these come from places like Pactiv in Canandaigua, the VA. I've had a couple from the VA, and then a couple in outlying areas that should have bus service but don't have bus service. As far as housing, I am a senior, and 30% of our county, I believe, population, somewhere around there, is over the age of 60 to 65. And that I hear, because I'm also in senior groups, of course, I hear it all the time. My rent just went up $220 a month. I can't afford to live in this apartment any longer. Where am I going to go? I have to move in with my son and daughter because I can no longer afford to live where I'm living right now. You understand it's coming from all directions, and seniors, of course, are not workforce, but they have been workforce.
Right.
And then I know Brenda can tell you about people that she has that require housing, and the waiting list she has. And Sarah can tell you about the people she has and the waiting list they have. Nash, we've worked with Habitat to develop an idea for owner-occupied housing, to try to figure out how to get affordable homes that people can own and live in, and make the mortgage payment. These are some of the things that we're struggling with.
Yeah, as far as seniors, we're hearing that a lot also, and not just the affordability, but the ability to perhaps age in place. You know, does their current home have the necessary features for that to happen? In a lot of cases, no. And then that costs money to install those things. Or like you were saying, single level living. So there's not stairs. So there are a lot of challenges in terms of housing stock that a lot of communities, if not every community, is facing in terms of the aging population. One thing that was really great to see is the county seems to have a real understanding of the needs of seniors, more than a lot of places we've seen. So I think they're well set up to address housing as a key component of that, compared to a lot of places we've worked that just seem to have their head buried in the sand, and all of a sudden this huge cohort is going to be in front of them that have no place to live, either because they can't afford it, or there's just nothing that will accommodate their needs. So we're encouraged that the county is on the right track that way. So that was really good for us to see. Let's see here. Yeah, so please go ahead.
With Pathstone, sorry, I joined a few minutes late. I was kind of stuck in the netherworld of the room there for a while, but glad to be involved. I work with Sarah at Pathstone.
Nice.
I oversee our owner-occupied home rehab programs and manufactured housing initiatives and a number of other program areas. I've been involved with our real estate development over the years, and I'm going to have an interview next week with one of your team, so I'll have my chance to opine individually, just to reflect on what we're seeing in terms of town of Canandaigua folks who seek assistance A lot of those are lower income folks who are homeowners, but who can't afford the upkeep of their home, and a lot of those are roof replacements that are in need. People are facing, some cases, cancellation of homeowners insurance or other consequences, from leaky roofs. As you mentioned, a lot of the requests we get are seniors aging in place or people with disabilities that need accessibility modifications as well as home rehabilitation. A lot of need for, gut rehab of kitchens and bathrooms in order to make them accessible and continue to allow people to remain in their homes. And then mobile homes are a big issue. It's just, we've got a lot of older, mobile home. By mobile home, I mean pre-1976, pre-HUD code homes, which are functionally obsolete and really need replacement. So Pathstone's involved in a multi-county context. We're based in Rochester, but we got an office in Canandaigua there. And so we are operating some of those mobile home replacement programs in other counties, as well as administering various state grant programs for owner-occupied home rehabilitation. Okay. And we run a handyman program over in Genesee County that would be an interesting model for Ontario County to consider, whether it's Pathstone or somebody else. That kind of a like small repair program that could be made available to seniors to just, sometimes just keeping seniors off of ladders is the most important thing we can do. And, have somebody who can go in and hang a picture for them or change the batteries in their, smoke alarm or, unplug a toilet or, those minor home repairs. Sometimes those can pile up and lead to somebody, needing to go into a nursing home when really all they needed was a handyman, so those are a few thoughts. And I know Sarah can provide input on the first-time home buyer needs in the county as well.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, a lot of those things I'm asked to do when I visit my parents. Okay, we saved all these things that we need these light bulbs replaced. We need this. So yeah, but to have something you can just call and come over is amazing. And you're right, it keeps people off ladders. It could make a real difference with the aging population. So it's great.
And this is Sarah from Pathstone. Nice meeting you again. So just to kind of piggyback on John, what he was discussing, I see a lot of first-time home buyers. What they're able to afford right now, they all need significant help to the point where the grants won't allow them to purchase because it's in such need of repair. Okay. So it's kind of frustrating on both sides because, like the grants that we might be able to offer, they need houses that are, in much better shape. Yeah. So it's kind of like a catch-22 for these clients. Like, all right, I'm just gonna, get this house just because I really need it, and that's all that's available right now. But then we're gonna see them back again to our foreclosure department because they can't make the repairs and the payments. So it's definitely a big kind of finding right now.
Sarah, we did our numbers just this week, and we found that 14% of the people who called us, and that was 143 families, were living in a place that was uninhabitable. So these are the places that you're talking about, that can't even be repaired. It's a camper without electric. It's, no water, no heat, a condemned mobile home. People are squatting. We're hearing that people are squatting in vacant homes.
I have a client, same. Couple of them.
So are you hearing that from residents of Ontario County?
Yeah.
So what municipalities?
Canandaigua.
Canandaigua. So how many people from Canandaigua responded that they're living in an uninhabitable home, trailer, camper, whatever?
Right. 15% of our study group, which was 146 families.
So they were all from Canandaigua, 146 people?
All of these were from Ontario County.
Okay, so I'm, we're the town of Canandaigua for, this presentation. So of those 143, how many were in the town of Canandaigua?
There are actually 130 families that the school has reported experienced homelessness at some point during the last academic school year.
Candidates.
Yeah, it sounds like,
Could be the city also.
Right.
kind of anecdotally, some of the social service providers I've spoken with say it's very much a hidden problem. Like a lot of people don't realize the extent of homelessness because it's not particularly visible, or just underhoused, not necessarily homelessness. If you don't see it every day, you might not think it's a problem, but yeah.
Well, and we need to find a better way to count them, because the pit count happens at night. And when you're in a county, people get themselves tucked in at night. They're not out sitting in a doorway at a restaurant. So there's nobody to ever count. So we don't ever, show that we have need, but we have all these people calling. So we have.
But you understand that we need to quantify this. You know what I mean? Like we can't all just keep talking about this and saying, oh, I heard this and I heard that. But we need a number. We need a hard number.
I have the exact numbers from the state of New York. They list all the school districts and how many homeless families there are. And I have that.
And from an affordability standpoint, I mean, our study will provide the numbers of, who's experiencing that. So all the kind of the trends and the data in terms of housing will be.
There's a lot of hidden. There's lots of families out here who are unhoused or in very dangerous situations. You might not realize that motel up the road is full of people who can't find apartments and are housed by DSS.
Right.
So it's not that we're just saying homeless people out on the street.
Right.
There's people all over this county that you might not even realize are having trouble finding affordable apartments for themselves. Because there's just none available. The stock is just not moving.
Yeah. And then some of the assistance of moving out of those hotels into society, and having those tools, there appears to be kind of a gap there as well. So, so we talked about affordability, which clearly is an issue. What about, when you think about the types of housing that the county has, there's a lot of single family, a lot of the new stuff is single family detached. Are there missing housing types that you're seeing? Are families being accommodated efficiently? Are there enough single apartments for people that don't need a big house with a big lawn above? They just want, an apartment that's low maintenance, close to work, from your standpoint. And I guess I'm talking countywide too, if you can put your county hat on for a second, because I know that the town is, with the Uptown project, it sounds like there's a lot of interesting things going on, to provide more housing. But is there?
We don't have housing for our big families. If you have a family that has 3 or more children, it's going to cost more than what fair market rate will pay and what HUD will pay.
Okay.
I was a chief financial officer for a construction company in the town of Farmington, which is not really in the center of Ontario County, but it was relatively close to Wayne County. And of course, we had, entry-level jobs. We had about 130 employees. And my advice, because I oversaw human resources, was to go to Wayne County to find housing. When they came to me and told me they had 2 kids or they had a baby, they couldn't find a place that they could afford on the salary that they had, or their wife was pregnant and couldn't work, or a man who had just gotten custody of his 2 teenage kids who, as we all know, eat a lot more than little kids do. That was the advice I handed out. don't stay in Ontario County, because there really isn't, even in Farmington, which is relatively close to some other, Manchester, which has some lower priced housing. My advice was always to really look first in Wayne County. What does that tell you? I'm sending people to another county who also has a problem with affordable housing, but they had more affordable housing available than Ontario County did. Now that was 6 years ago, so I've been retired for 6 years. So, but I'm sure it still happens.
Yeah. If not worse, right? With the crazy housing market 2 years ago.
And that was a small company. I mean, Pactiv is a very large company. The VA is very large, and the hospitals have many people working for them. But the critical area is the service industry in a tourism county, where these service people work. Sometimes, most of them work at least 2 jobs. Some work 3 jobs. And then they need to be close to where they work.
Yeah, Pastone owns and manages a number of affordable rental communities in City of Canandaigua, town of Farmington, over in Clifton Springs. And, we've got long waiting lists for all those units, especially the senior apartments in Canandaigua. Definitely not enough affordable senior apartments. And just to echo what Brenda said, the larger family sizes, it's just crazy a 3-bedroom apartment is hard enough to get. If you need 4 bedrooms, good luck. There's just hardly anything out there. And for families that are just over that, there's this sort of, tax credit apartments that, have been built quite a bit and across the county, not necessarily in the town so much, but if you're above 60% AMI and you're sort of over income for a low income housing tax credit apartment, but you can't afford, the market rents for apartments, you'd have to make an 120 plus AMI. So there's that 60 to 120 range is really a huge need for, reasonably priced rental housing that doesn't, have the tax credit, restrictions on it.
Yeah.
Our shelter was backed up. We had been putting people through our program in about 65 days. We're now up to the average 175 nights per family because they can't get out. There's no place they can afford.
So, part of our assignment is to kind of help answer the macro question as well, but wanted to get your sense of your understanding of what's going on. It's clear that supply is not keeping up with the demand in the county. How do you attribute that, in your opinion? Is it friction against zoning, land use policies? Is it community opposition to certain types? Is it just building industry and not being able to produce enough units because of cost, labor issues? What do you think is kind of causing this underlying economic problem that's manifesting in this way?
It's too expensive to build the size apartments that we need, and just because building materials have gone up so much.
It's more than that, Isaac. It's part of it is at the level of the New York State tax credit and grant opportunity programs that are available to people who can build low-income housing for DeMarco and Edgemere Development. There's all sorts. We in the town of Canandaigua actually have 3 producers of low-income housing who have not been able to get the tax credits and the grants that they need in order to move forward. One of them, Chris Rolland, is one his application was just approved by the town of Canandaigua for Edgemere Development. We have Jackie Hawks Little here, who is with Happiness House. They've had approval for years for more housing on their property. And DeMarco has had approval for another phase of their development for, I don't
I
know,
think 3 more.
Three
phases, doesn't
years.
DeMarco have?
So,
I think so, yeah.
that's part of the critical area that restricts providing
Yeah.
for families that these people are talking about, and that we have absolutely no control over.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so it sounds like, well, at least in the town of Canandaigua, I'm sure other towns would have a different thought possibly, but you are all pretty open to clearly, some of these projects because they've been approved, and so it's really more the funding in your case.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
In terms of home ownership and sustainable home ownership, I mean, taxes are a big factor in affordability. So, we got families, we can help them out with a low interest mortgage through USDA, 1% mortgage money, but they might wind up paying just as much in taxes each month as they do in principal and interest on their loan. And it just prices a lot of people out of the market.
Yeah.
That's true no matter what market you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about so Uptown is a place that's kind of an epicenter of some of this growth, which is great. Do you have any opinions on like other parts of the county, kind of thinking again beyond just your town if possible, that you think should be targeted for more housing as the county grows and grapples with how do we provide more housing, whether it's
Geneva.
workforce affordable or
That
Geneva is
actually
always going to be a hotspot.
is a question that I had. What is the attitude? What's the approach that, some of these other communities and managers and supervisors are looking at? Well, what's their opinion? We really don't know.
We really don't know. We're just the town of Canandaigua. I mean,
Yeah.
we hear stories, but we don't really have direct knowledge of that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
were
I think-
thinking about doing a project in Geneva, and the city of Geneva was very open to that.
So when you're doing inventory on this, are you going to, one of the big things in Canandaigua was the VA. They have, I don't know, is it $500,000 that they're putting into some housing for veterans? Will that be included in your inventory?
Well, Isaac, correct me if that's wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is considered more of a group housing situation, right? That's not part of.
I'm not sure of that. I'm not. I mean, when you drive by them, they look like, apartments.
Yeah, we have to look into that. We are in the discovery phase, as you can, as we said, and whatever resources or programming that's hindering or assisting, we should be able to profile that. But to the extent, like Chris is saying, if it's kind of a jointly managed, like a sort of like a nursing home, kind of a setup, they're considered a group quarter, which is not part of the housing market, if you will. But certainly it has an effect on the housing market. So we will, and can document that, and to the effect that it influences the market. So having said that, like senior homes, like I said, is going to be a big factor as well, because we are running a survey, and we do ask questions about seniors with what their long-term, desires are in terms of staying in their current home or moving to a retirement community or moving in with their relatives. So we'll get an idea of what folks say. But our experience typically has been that 3/4 of the respondents that are seniors typically say we want to stay in our current home long term, which definitely has some policy implications for sure, because many of those folks they do also say the house is not equipped for aging in place. So, there's a mismatch between their desire and what may actually happen as soon as they become, physically challenged. Then you're talking about, major investment that needs to happen. And you have a fixed income senior population, then, they can't afford that. So I don't know what the options are. So that's one of the things that we want to tease out in our analysis as well. And then finding the solution is not, So we'll get there a little bit later on in terms of our analysis. But let's see, what else can we ask, Chris?
One of the strategies that other communities around the state have employed, especially with home rehabilitation, is to just target a specific area. And I'm on this committee, several meetings I've heard mentioned of the village of Cheshire, as an area with some distressed housing, and so other places, rather than having a sort of a scattershot approach to a unit here, a unit there, all over the town. Pick a particular village or a particular street that you really want to make a focus investment in, and then that can spread throughout the community. As people sort of observe that this particular area is, those people are kind of getting new siding and a new roof, and then other people who may have the means to do some work on their home, maybe they're going to paint their front porch, or do some small improvements themselves. So it can be somewhat contagious to make that kind of a focus investment. So that would be one potential strategy.
So the surveys that you've received back are, you said 600 surveys?
Yep.
So what's a good response rate? I mean, how many people are in the Ontario County?
About 112,000, I believe.
So of 112,000, 600 people have responded, and I did it twice, so you have to take from that.
Yeah, it's probably never going to be scientific, as it where a certain percentage fills it out that you can consider scientific information. So, but compared to other places we've worked, this has been an incredible response rate. You've already exceeded anywhere else we've done this. So kudos to you all for spreading the word. And we're going to leave it up till the end of February. So continue to, send the link and the QR code. And so we would appreciate that. So yeah, to answer your question, a great response rate. We're not counting on the feedback as our end all be all data. It's supplementing what we're researching. It's diving deeper and providing more of a qualitative, I guess, feedback compared to the quantitative stuff that we're finding. So together with that, it's really great information.
I had a question just about, in terms of that survey, because it is all online, and I know it went out with like QR codes and things like that. Digital access is a challenge for many folks in the community. I was just wondering if there are other avenues by which you're trying to solicit similar information from those folks that can't necessarily fill this survey out.
The county is aware of that, and they're very willing to. In fact, I'll have to check back with Alyssa if I know when they did a prior effort, I think it was the comprehensive plan, they did have paper copies in various locations. She did say, however, that they were kind of disappointed by the response to that. So it was a lot of work with very little return. And she was at the same time pretty happy with the digital response. So point taken, absolutely. There are people that cannot access it digitally. What we've done in cases like that too, not only public places where people can get the survey, but folks on our stakeholder list that deal with the public and have a constituency that they work with regularly. They where possible are distributing or sitting down with people even and going through the survey and helping them fill it out. So there is some outreach, non-digital outreach going on among groups where possible. So, but yeah, we do recognize that.
And I'm with the Ontario Housing Consortium. We had our meeting this morning, so you might get a lot of emails from the different members. But yeah, we've received all the stakeholder emails, and I was promoting sending it out to their clients, everything like that.
Great.
So I think if we have some of these community groups that are out there, as well as there's Geneva, there's a Geneva Housing Task Force.
Yep. We're talking to all those folks too.
Just to get it out in more areas.
Exactly.
And I would say even the Finger Lakes Housing Consortium, only because there's agencies that deal with multiple counties.
Mhm. Good to
How
know.
often are we going to be meeting?
With us about this study?
Yes, the reason why I'm asking
Yep.
is because right now, this time of year, from what I've noticed, is like the town board's going to be going into planning. There's a lot that's going to be happening right now, I think in a fairly short period of time. We have the comprehensive plan that we haven't, talked about yet, that type of thing. So I personally think that there needs to be a way for us to stay up to date with you.
Yeah. Well, the plan is we will come back in probably April and present the findings of our analysis. And everybody on the group, your group here, all the people we're meeting with and speaking with, we would all be invited to a presentation. So you'd get the kind of the most updated presentation of our findings. And then, as Isaac mentioned on that graphic, we would kind of step into the next phase, which is what's the demand, what are the needs based on growth and the challenges of the county, and what are the strategies for achieving that. So then we would come back and present those to you as well. So there are kind of two opportunities where we'll present updates to the project. So that's kind of the plan right now.
Thanks.
Sure.
A lot of people from other counties are on the move, or other states, and trying to locate themselves in Ontario County. We discourage that. We don't take people into the shelter now that are not Ontario County people, because we just have so many Ontario County people.
Okay.
And we know there isn't housing for them,
Yeah. Thinking a little about the county and its role in housing, however much or little you think that should be. Do you have any thoughts on what the county can do to improve the situation that you see as a challenge in terms of more housing, affordable housing? Can they help facilitate in any way in your mind to get the ball rolling a little more?
Are you asking me or the town?
Oh, the whole group. Yeah. Anyone, feel free to speak up.
I have a thought, and that is to have a multi-county housing authority, preferably at least 3 counties. And I know Wayne County has an affordable housing team of sorts, and either Seneca or Yates County would be the other county that I would say would be worthwhile looking into. My reasoning is I believe that gives you more credibility in the housing market, the affordable housing market. If you have the bigger the conglomerate, the more activity you can probably expect. I don't know if that applies to housing, but it certainly applies to the business world.
I think the challenge with that is, though, that affordable housing and housing in general across the board is very local. So what is appropriate in the town of Canandaigua might not be appropriate in the town of Farmington and the city of Geneva or wherever. So I think you have to get input from those municipalities and come out with recommendations for specific areas, because we're all dramatically different.
Yeah.
Not really, though, Dave. All of us, the entire county, goes to the New York Restore Communities grant program for tax credits. Geneva does it.
But you're talking about tax credits. I'm talking about the areas where we live. I mean, how many $10 million houses are there in Farmington?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about apartment complexes like the DeMarco development, the Edgemere development, the Habitat.
But those have all been approved for our town.
They have all been approved, but they can't build.
Well, that,
Because
how
they-
is, but how does that
because-
reflect on us?
Because the more we have behind us, the more I believe we would have credibility in these grant programs that come from the state and the federal government.
So I disagree with you. I think that we need to be more local than global, because that helps us within our communities be able to establish the needs of of our community, which is different from community to community. I think if you want grant funding, I think, and it's coming from the state, we have officials that are elected that have control of that. So that's out of our control.
Yeah, we need to do a better job though at advocating for rural communities, because our numbers are not equal to inner city areas and the money goes elsewhere. You know, we
So
all
the money goes,
taxes,
the
that
money,
money should come back to us and
the money,
build-
right, but the money goes elsewhere because those people that are in control of the money are sending it elsewhere. That has nothing to do with, there are 3 elected officials in the room. We have no control over that money, yet there's 3 good projects that are approved in the town of Canandaigua. So where's the money?
I think part of it, we're too prosperous a community.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna argue with that,
Yeah,
but
there could be, there could be truth to that. Yeah, it's very competitive, and you're right. Anyone in that room, that's beyond their control to a certain degree.
but that makes my point for local versus global, because in the local aspect of stuff, we're different than the city of Newark. They would qualify more, we probably wouldn't.
Sarah, we didn't hear what you
I
said,
think it's
Sarah.
our
Could you
perpetual
repeat
problem.
that?
Yeah, coming from like nonprofit that applies for grants, we need strong support and backing when we put these proposals through. So having more support and cohesiveness within the county will provide a stronger grant program and grant RFP, so that we do get the funds here. So they're convinced to come here rather than giving it.
Well, I know the one we just talked about at the Uptown project, the town has to apply for that grant, the last piece of that grant.
Right.
It's not 4 counties applying for it, it's the town of Canandaigua has to apply for that grant. So that's what I'm saying. I think we need to look at this, we in this room need to look at it local. You guys need to give us some of the global problems and solutions.
Well, we would appreciate more feedback too, and coming to us, because a lot of times we don't really get an idea of what's going on with the town until it's already done. So I think having a better partnership and relationship with municipalities, just so you know what we're doing and what we're seeing, as well as what the town is doing and seeing, which is kind of what this, subcommittee is trying to do.
Yeah, this is Chris from Edgemere. One of the biggest things that an organization like New York State HCR looks for is local leverage, right? And whether that is in the form of something like home dollars or a pilot agreement or something like that, they kind of look at that as locals, as another form of local support, right? And leveraging their resources with a locality's resources is a big deal, because they don't necessarily want to be the only financier of a project, right? They want all stakeholders to have some skin in the game. So
There's usually a 50% match.
So what I'm
And if
what
you
I'm
get a
hearing,
nonprofit to join with you, your application looks stronger.
Yeah.
So not necessarily a 50% match, I'd say, but it's your ability to leverage other resources, public and private, that allow the state to say, okay, there's real support for this project in this locality, and it's demonstrated by maybe it's dollars, maybe it's tax abatement, and then and support letters, things like that. So those things are all taken into consideration when someone like HCR is making a decision to allocate their resources to different areas.
And to veer away from that discussion, one thing I can say I've seen in every single area of Ontario County, because I serve the whole county, is rehab and repair. there's no new housing stock, coming into play, rapidly. And apartments, landlord properties, houses, current homeowners are looking to buy, everything needs rehab right now. So countywide, that could be a huge game changer, and at least opening up the conversation and opening up more spaces that are already there for housing.
It seems like we spend a lot of time trying to avoid the fact that the numbers are the numbers and that there are unhoused families in our county, and just we need to just say, okay, let's do something about it. Let's admit that it's here. Let's admit that it isn't, as bad as an inner city, but it's still really not good for these families. They need homes. And I would like to see us just get over that. Is it or isn't it here? It is here, so let's do something about it.
Yeah, sorry, Isaac, go ahead. You're trying to say something.
Yeah, this discussion about like kind of the larger or the global or the local, it's really intriguing for me to listen to, because many of these studies that we document the local need for affordable housing, it's this, but then you try to meet that by building this, but there's no guarantee that the people that you're serving will be these people, because affordable housing, people are going to go where there's housing available. So you might be building for affordable housing need in the town, but people that are priced out of Victor might be the ones that are living in your complex. So there has to be some notion of like a fair share or like a regional kind of aspiration, if you will, because I'm really encouraged that we're sitting in front of you, a group like this in the town of Canandaigua, but other portions of the county, I'm guessing, do not have the same desire to have these kind of conversations. If anything, they want put it over here, not here. The spirit of NIMBYism is probably pretty strong. So is there a kind of like notion that you want to drive some conversation at the county-wide level, at least at this point, because we're hired by the county, to have a county-wide notion of like every community should have some affordability and should welcome it, kind of a thing? Any thoughts about that?
Well, I think it goes back to one of the questions or comments that were raised. What is the attitude of other portions of the county? Those managers, their councils, I don't know how it's set up.
Well, and I think that's the important of you guys, in that we're local.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't change that. We're not going to go start knocking on doors in Geneva, but I certainly expect that they have the same needs that the town of Canandaigua does. But what is their fair share? If what I'm hearing you say is correct, is that at some point in time, everyone needs to provide some, whatever your term affordable means. It's different for everybody, but are we going to be able to do that collaboratively across the county?
Well, look at Hopewell.
Yeah.
Hopewell has no school. They don't have a lot of affordable housing. They use all of the town of Canandaigua and city of Canandaigua resources for all their needs, but there's really nothing that I'm aware of, particularly.
But by recognizing that the entire county has a problem, because we live in this county, we all pay county taxes. I've got one on my kitchen counter. If we can get the entire county to agree that there is a problem, I have talked with Victor, Farmington, Bloomfield, and Geneva people. And out of those 4 supervisors, 2 say there's no problems, and I'll leave you to figure out which 2 say there's no problem. But there is a problem. And you talked about interviewing Eastview Mall, which is in the town of Victor.
Yep.
So, and Farmington is a gateway community, right with a throughway exit. So it makes it easy to get to any type of employment within 20 minutes. So now you know which communities say they don't have a problem, but they do have a problem. They do have a problem because all the rest of us are affected by their problem.
It sounds like there's an interesting mix of some communities that recognize the problem and are willing to do something about it, like yours, which is fantastic. Others don't want to admit that there's a problem and don't want to think about it. And then there's the whole funding problem, which you've really brought to light. It's not always just the willingness, but it's, you know, the town's approved it. Now we need funding to get this thing built. So that's a message we're hearing loud and clear. It's good to know.
This is Chris, and I apologize. I have to jump off after this. I think another interesting kind of dynamic of all this is that, you know, there's things like the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council, right? So places like HCR and ESD and things like that, they look at things in terms of these different regions. And unfortunately, or fortunately for all of us, the Finger Lakes is probably the most competitive in terms of getting resources allocated. And you run into things like, Rochester is super competitive when it comes to allocating resources. So it does seem to make sense that a more global strategy on how to, tackle that competitiveness where everyone kind of can get a bite at the apple. It's definitely an interesting discussion, particularly in the Finger Lakes region.
And we're seeing, examples around the country where governments are doing kind of interesting things to leverage funding or, creating their own funding source to bridge gaps, financing gaps, things to help move the ball a bit to where it's, instead of sitting stagnant because there's a missing segment of funding, it's getting it going, so we can look at some of the national examples as well that might be applicable. Let's see, any other, Isaac, do you have any questions? I've kind of gotten mine answered.
Yeah,
Is there anything you all that's on your mind that we have not picked? And if something comes up later, feel free to please reach out to us. Karen, I know you've got our emails.
I do have.
Yeah, feel free to distribute them. We're happy to hear any more over time.
And could I ask you to send me a copy of the paper, copy of the survey?
Oh, sure.
Because because I'm old, I have contact with a lot of old people who don't.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Computers and in several different communities, I have contacts. I can get them.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have a two-sided. We tried to keep it to one page to make it easy.
Yeah, so they can maintain their attention.
Right. Yeah. No problem. We'll do.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm overwhelmed. I really appreciate the two of you coming on.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And talking with us today and listening to us rant and rave about our issues.
That's why we're here.
I think everybody here is thankful that you did this. And can I count on you to show up again and let us know where you're at? I won't
Sure.
contact you every week, every month, but maybe in a couple of months you will have more information on where you are.
Yeah, we could even, when we have the kind of the interim report, we could go through it with you all, maybe in addition to coming there and going over it with the larger stakeholder group. So
that would be wonderful. Thank you so much for everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to call it an end because everybody loses attention after
it is Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Please reach out to us and speak to one-on-one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you again for your feedback. Okay. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Press end.
Bye.